Welcome back, everybody, to episode 2. This is primarily going to be on Christianity. And I'm not going to screw around too much with a whole lot of prefacing or anything like that with a lot of stuff, but I do want to address a couple things. First of all, you're going to see me in different shirts and stuff like that. I'm wearing glasses today because some days are better than others with my eyes. I'm getting a little older now, so some days the eyes don't work as good, and it makes it easier to see my computer screen. The reason you'll see me in different clothes is because I have to piece these together. I don't have 3 hours to sit down and do videos, so I'm gonna just kind of do a little bit at a time. In order to keep things cohesive and poignant. And then B, because it's just a matter of having the amount of time that it takes to dedicate to doing these. And, I want to make something clear again. I think I did this maybe a little too much in the first video, but I'm not a hateful person, okay? And I know that there are a lot of YouTube channels out there, and there are a lot of periodicals, magazines, and online magazines, all kinds, a plethora of books, doing their best to hate on religion and things like that. That is not what I'm here for. That's easy, okay? It would be easy for me to sit here and just shoot out a diatribe of hate, and it's just not conducive to us becoming a better species, okay? There's a gentleman named Richard Dawkins, and I've read his books, and he's a atheist. He's an atheist, and he's very unapologetic about it, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. But sometimes he's a little curt, and he's got a book. He's very famous for his book where he kind of takes the idea that there was never any such thing as Jesus Christ, and he made some good points in there. But I'm not ready to bite that piece of the apple, okay? I don't believe that Jesus of Nazareth never existed, okay, that he was completely made up. And I understand that there were other people named Jesus at the time of Jesus Christ, and I get all of that, but I digress. I just want to make sure that I'm clear here that this isn't about hate, okay? Again, this is from love, and it's just a matter of wanting to bring some information to people that just may have not received it yet. You have missionaries out there that go to Africa and these third world countries where they don't have the gospel of Jesus Christ, and they go there and they preach. Okay, well, that's what I'm doing. I'm preaching the idea that there is other information out there other than the Bible and other than Richard Dawkins. Okay, excuse me. And I don't think I mentioned this in the first video. If I did, I apologize. But I have a illness, and it makes my mouth really dry. So you're going to see me drinking a lot. So I apologize for that, but it's the medication that I'm on, and I can't help my mouth gets really dry. I want to start off by giving some props to the Catholic Church, primarily. And I say the Catholic Church because they're the original church, right? And around the 5th century, they dubbed Jesus' birthday December 25th. All right. Now, in some other videos, we'll get to the significance of December 25th. But one of the things that I think is important to point out about Christmas is it's sometimes magical, right? Sometimes you get families that have differences, but on that day, or even just for a couple of hours, they come together. They speak to each other when the other 364 days they don't even speak to each other, you know? And I think that, it's unfortunate that that happens, but at least on that day, some magic is performed, and there's some magic performed for children, you know. They're all excited on Christmas Eve and they go to bed early knowing that St. Nick's coming down that chimney and going to leave them presents, And so I want to point out that it's not all bad stuff, Matter of fact, it's done a lot of good. The Catholic Church, it's taken a lot of hits, and rightfully so, but it has done some good things, I belong to the Catholic Church, and I know I've seen firsthand some of the really good things that it's done. And, financially helping families and, just about every city in this country has a St. Vincent de Paul where, a family that's struggling needs a refrigerator and they get one. It's not brand new, but it's in good condition. They need a stove. They get one. So they've done some good things. And I want to point those things out. And I think it's very important to keep some balance here. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Excuse me. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that this isn't just a hateful diatribe. Okay. And so there's a story of a virgin birth, that's under a star. And, and three kings follow this star to get to this new found Messiah. And the problem is that it's been told countless times. Countless times. I mean, when I say countless, I mean countless in the sense that there are probably some that we haven't even discovered yet. But dozens and dozens of times that we know of, that this story, the same story, was told before it was told and slapped onto the name of Jesus. And fortunately, it stopped with Jesus. But make no mistake, the story has been plagiarized. Okay. It's been plagiarized many, many times. Now, is there this, and you'll see some videos and online articles about how there's this linear path between Jesus and such, Jesus and Dionysus, Jesus and Horus, Jesus and Osiris, and they try to make it look like it's word for word. It's not word for word, okay? But there are many Egyptian stories out there. There are many Greek mythology stories out there that bits and pieces of Jesus's story are in those stories. Okay? Excuse me. The story of a virgin birth and, born under the star. They taught the masses and had followers, disciples, if you will, performed miracles, raising people from the dead. They died a gruesome death and somehow they were resurrected. These stories, although they might not be linear in the sense that they go line for line with one particular person, they do Every single one of the stories of Jesus's life has been told before. Right. Dionysus he performed miracles with wine. He filled vats of wineskins or jugs with wine out of nowhere, right? Where have we heard that story before, right? You know, Osiris died a gruesome death, and you know, he was dismembered, and Isis, you know, found all of his parts and put them back together. But the fact is he died, he was resurrected. You know, and you've had this story told countless times, you know, where a person died and was resurrected. You know, so each part of the story of Jesus has been told before, in many, many times in certain cases. You know, Dionysus was born again, twice born. And depending on what you've read, you know, he was born more than a couple times, but then, you know, then he went through this trial of sorts, and there was a ruler, Pentheus, and Pentheus, you know, he's questioning Dionysus, and you know, and Dionysus is antagonizing him. Where's that story? Pontius Pilate, right? It's the same story. The whole thing has been told before, and the story of Dionysus is from a playwright. It's called the Bacchae, or the Bacchae, and you know, this was from 405 BC, 405 years before Jesus. Okay, so you know, you've got so many stories about people, you know, being dead and risen, you know, with all of these miracle works and raising people from the dead, and just the whole line of. It's very important to say this, because there's so many people out there, Christian apologists, that want to say, well, these were mythical stories. Okay, well, but here's the problem with it being a mythical story, and this is the part that I just cannot accept. Okay, maybe you can. I cannot, because either one of two things have taken place here. Either the stories were plagiarized, or we had time travelers, and they were absolute geniuses in their ability to predict the future. You know, just because they were mythical stories, it doesn't matter. They all predated Jesus Christ. You can't argue that. So, and then I want to tell you a story about someone called Simon of Perea. Now, this is the one that I find most interesting. As you know, Gabriel is the angel that told Mary that she is to give birth to Jesus, the Christ. And then there was this tablet that has been unearthed, and it's now known as the Gabriel stone, and is believed to be a tombstone. And there's some very interesting things that are said on this stone. For instance, Gabriel speaking to the Prince of Princes. Okay, the Prince of Princes is just another word for Messiah, right? And the inscription is speaking to the Messiah that dies. And he's telling them that they are going to rise again in 3 days. Okay? The stone is also mentioned that this person would be known as the Christ, quote unquote. And here's the problem with this stone. It was created just before, or at best, the time of Jesus's birth. All right.
Here we have for the first time an evidence that the belief in the death and resurrection after 3 days of a messianic leader existed even before the time of Jesus.
And it's important to note that anybody that had the lineage to King David, all right, at any point had the ability to say, I am the Messiah. Okay? So if you have that direct lineage to King David, you could say at any time, you could make this claim, okay? You can stand up and say, I am the Messiah. Well, this is exactly what Simon of Perea did. And Herod was constantly worried about some sort of messiahs because he knew that this is going to create a revolt. Okay? If this Messiah could get the people in Herod's kingdom, if this Messiah could get them behind him, and they could stand up to Herod, and there would be a revolt. Well, that's exactly what happened. And so what does Herod do? Herod decides to have Simon of Perea killed. Okay? Well, the bad part is that they didn't, and by the way, Simon of Perea was the story that Gabriel was telling to on the stone. So Simon Perea was the Christ of this time. Okay? And then so what Herod did is he had him killed, and they had him cornered into this stone area. All right? And it was just surrounded by stones. There was a little bit of high ground, but the high ground was going to be protected by all of Herod's lynchmen.
At first, Simon was successful. He defeated a Roman garrison and crowned himself Messiah. The Romans went after him with a vengeance, and they chased Simon into a Perean gully like this one.
So they had Simon cornered. They stoned him to death, which they loved to do back in that day. And so when they stoned him to death, they didn't allow anybody to recover his body. Why is that? Well, because if you can't recover the body, then you can't claim, you can't bury them, and you can't say that they were resurrected. Right? So, excuse me one second. This is where I theorize. So, as I said in my first video, 90% of what you're going to be arguing with, if you want to argue about this, is fact. Now, this is where I'm going to theorize a little bit. I think that the Jews especially, needed another Messiah, and quick. Okay? Because they just took out Simon, who was supposed to be the Christ. Right? They knew that they needed somebody to step in there as soon as they could, so they could call him Christ, and that way they could get behind that person and then find their way back to Herod and have a revolt on their hands. And again, which is what they did. So, you know, understand that whether you're talking about Dionysus, Simon of Perea, Osiris, Horus, Pythagoras, Mithras, you know, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. Understand it when you're talking about all of these stories, whether they're written as historical pieces or if they're written as mythical books. They still all predate Jesus Christ. You can't argue that. You can't argue the fact that these stories were all told before, and you can't argue that they all predated Jesus Christ. I hate to say it, But, and I hate to, and I say I hate to say it because I do hate to say it to people that may not be aware of this. Because I know this isn't easy to hear. And the first time you hear it, you're going to be like, you son of a bitch. You know, F you, and you know what the hell you're talking about. And then, like I said in the first video, you're going to go to IamRight.com and you're going to try to find out everything you can to counter what I said. But you can't argue with this. All of the stories of Jesus were told before. All of those stories predate Jesus. You can't argue it. You can't argue it. And I'm going to come back. You're not going to even miss a beat here with seeing me. But when I come back, I'm going to talk about, we're going to play a little make-believe. Okay? And we're going to talk about how, what if Jesus was real? What if, let's play the game. Let's pretend that Jesus, his story was legit, and everything in the New Testament about Jesus Christ was legit. Then we're going to take it from there, and we're going to talk about what took place after the fact. But I'm going to leave you with this. If all of these things happen, if somebody raised somebody from the dead, there was a guy that was dead and he's no longer dead. Why in the world did somebody, and if somebody walked on water, I saw a guy walk on water. Let's do this. If I saw a guy walking across the Atlantic Ocean out here, or if you're up in Michigan or Ohio and you see somebody walking on Lake Erie, or if you're in California, you see somebody walking on the Pacific Ocean, are you not going to be freaked out? You're not going to tell everybody you know. You're not going to call the local news. You're not going to call the local newspaper. And they're not going to write about this like there's nobody else that ever existed in the world. You're going to write about this. Sorry about that. My video cut off. So you find somebody that walked on water. You saw somebody raise somebody from the dead. Why is nobody writing this down? At best, we estimate that the first gospel was written 60 years after Jesus' death. It doesn't add up. Doesn't add up. Have you ever seen anybody raise somebody from the dead? Have you ever seen anybody take a basket and just fill it with fish, wine, raise somebody from the dead, walk on water, the whole 9 yards? Somebody that was born of a virgin birth. Why is nobody writing about that when it happened? We'll be back.
Thousands of people did flock to Simon's side. He was crowned king and declared Messiah, Redeemer. In Greek, he was called Christ.